I returned from my week-long hiking trip to find soggy wine glasses, drenched towels, and something even worse. Karen from the HOA had been throwing parties in my hot tub. No permission, no shame. At first, I couldn't believe my eyes. My luxury spa, which I had painstakingly installed on my property as a private retreat, was now being used as an extension of someone else's social calendar. The hot tub surface was a chaotic mosaic of abandoned cups and stray decorations. It was clear, while I was off exploring the wild, someone had taken over my sanctuary. So, I did what any sane man would do in my situation. I turned my hot tub into a trap. Quietly, with a steady resolve and a touch of mischief, I laced the water with a potent mix of blue dye and chili oil. I knew it was risky, but I wasn't about to let Karen's entitlement go unchallenged. I could already imagine the look on her face when she returned, expecting the familiar, soothing warmth of the tub, only to be met with an explosion of color and a fiery sting that would make her scream louder than any 911 call she'd ever made. This wasn't a joke. It was a statement. A statement that no one, not even a self-appointed enforcer of community standards, could abuse my property without facing consequences. The plan was simple, elegant, and entirely my own, a rebellious act of artistic defiance that would turn her world upside down. My property, nestled on the outskirts of the meticulously maintained, gated community of Willow Creek, was a haven of individuality in a sea of conformity. While most houses in Willow Creek adhered strictly to the HOA's exacting standards, every lawn trimmed to precision and every exterior painted in muted tones, I had always embraced a more eclectic style. My home and its surrounding property were expressions of creativity, where modern luxury met a free-spirited, personal touch. Central to my private oasis was my hot tub, a sleek, state-of-the-art spa installed as a reward for years of hard work and a symbol of the freedom to enjoy life on my own terms. It was my sanctuary, a place where I could unwind, soak in the serenity of nature, and recharge my soul after long days on the farm. I had invested not only in the best technology, but also in designing an environment that celebrated personal expression. Then there was Karen Miller, known around Willow Creek as HOA Karen. In her early 50s and always impeccably dressed in conservative outfits, Karen prided herself on being the guardian of community standards. With a clipboard in hand and a smartphone glued to her ear, she patrolled the neighborhood like a modern-day sheriff, quick to report any deviation from the approved aesthetic. To Karen, any sign of individual flair was a disruption, a blemish on the perfectly curated image of Willow Creek. Over the years, she had fined and admonished several residents for minor infractions, each time insisting that conformity was the key to maintaining property values and social order. While many residents had learned to tread carefully around her, I had always chafed at the thought that someone could dictate how I enjoyed my own property. My hot tub was my personal retreat, a place of relaxation, creativity, and even inspiration. I designed it with care, choosing its location to take in a panoramic view of my sprawling fields and the distant rolling hills beyond. It was more than a luxury. It was a symbol of my hard-won independence. Yet, Karen's relentless enforcement reached a new level when she decided, without any notice or permission, to use my hot tub as her personal party venue. She had organized gatherings, invited people from around the community, and treated my private spa as if it were a communal amenity. The audacity was staggering, and while I'd tolerated her meddling in the past, this was the final straw. As the details unfolded, soggy wine glasses left behind, towels carelessly strewn about, and remnants of an impromptu celebration, I knew I had to act. I couldn't let my sanctuary be hijacked by someone whose sole mission was to impose her version of perfection. And so, with the memory of Karen's previous transgressions fueling my resolve, I set out to reclaim my property in the most unexpected way possible. The discovery of the unauthorized hot tub parties left me fuming. I quickly scoured the security footage I had installed around my property. The images confirmed my worst fears. Karen Miller, clipboard in hand, and dressed in her usual austere style, had been seen overseeing the gatherings with a look of self-righteous satisfaction. The footage captured her directing the partygoers, ensuring that everything conformed to her strict interpretation of decorum, even as they partied in my personal spa. I decided that simply reporting her actions to the HOA board wouldn't suffice. Karen had built a reputation that made her nearly untouchable in the eyes of the board. Her track record of petty fines and micromanaging every aspect of the community had, over time, eroded any sympathy some board members might have had for dissenting homeowners. I needed to respond in kind, with a dramatic, unequivocal act that would force the issue into the public eye. That's when I conceived my counter-strategy. I would transform my hot tub from a site of intrusion into a stage for retribution. Working meticulously, I prepared a secret batch of blue dye mixed with chili oil, a combination designed to turn the water into a vivid, unpredictable trap. The blue dye would immediately change the color of the water, making it visually jarring, while the chili oil would ensure that any unsuspecting user experienced an unpleasant, fiery sting. I waited until I was sure the party had ended. Late one evening, as the last of the guests stumbled off and the laughter died down, I crept outside with my supplies. My hands trembled not from fear, but from the adrenaline of long-held frustration finally finding a creative outlet. I carefully poured the mixture into the hot tub, making sure it blended evenly with the remaining water. I double-checked the levels and then retreated quietly to my study, where I set up my security camera to capture every moment of what was about to unfold. The next morning, I woke to chaos. Neighbors gathered on their porches, smartphones in hand, as my hot tub, once a symbol of serenity, had been transformed into a swirling, electric blue cauldron. Within minutes, a panic scream split the air. I hurried to the window and saw Karen, her face contorted in shock and pain. As she stepped into the tub, her eyes watering not just from the cold, but from the intense burning sensation of the chili-infused water. The scream was unforgettable, a raw, piercing cry that echoed through the neighborhood and was captured on every camera in sight. I immediately recorded the spectacle, knowing that the digital evidence of Karen's reaction would soon circulate widely. As Karen scrambled out of the hot tub, cursing and flailing, I could see the mix of humiliation and regret in her eyes. It was a moment of poetic justice that I had been waiting for, a chance to show that when someone encroaches on my property, the consequences will be swift and unmistakable. The digital files, along with my written account of the incident, were soon posted on community forums and social media platforms. Hashtags like #HotTubHijack and #KarenCaught trended locally. Neighbors who had long been frustrated by the HOA's arbitrary fines now had a rallying point, a shared moment of triumph over the oppressive enforcement of rules by one overzealous individual. But the conflict was far from over. Karen's 911 call, which had been made in haste during the incident, further fanned the flames of controversy. While some residents found her reaction comical, others saw it as a dangerous escalation of petty tyranny. The HOA board, pressured by the growing digital outcry and the undeniable evidence of the transformed hot tub, was forced to schedule a special meeting to address the issue. I knew that this meeting would be the battleground for deciding whether the HOA would continue to allow arbitrary fines and intrusive behavior, or whether the community would finally reclaim its right to individual expression and property freedom. With every piece of evidence I collected, from the altered water's vivid hue to the viral video of Karen's scream, I was preparing for that showdown. I contacted supportive neighbors, encouraged them to attend the meeting, and even reached out to local media outlets, ensuring that our cause would not be silenced. The sense of anticipation was palpable. Over the following days, discussions erupted online. Many residents shared their own stories of being fined or harassed for minor deviations from the HOA's strict rules. The digital petition I launched demanding reform garnered thousands of signatures, and the momentum continued to build. The entire community was on the brink of a turning point, and my act of defiance had become a powerful symbol of resistance against arbitrary authority. In the wake of the hot tub incident, The digital landscape of Willow Creek transformed overnight. Social media exploded with shared videos, screenshots, and spirited discussions about the rights of property owners. Hashtags like hashtag #HotTubHijack, hashtag #NoMoreKaren, and hashtag Property Freedom began trending as residents who had long endured the oppressive micromanagement of the HOA finally found their voice. My carefully recorded footage of Karen's agonized scream was replayed countless times, each viewing amplifying the collective outrage of the community. Local news channels were quick to cover the story. Reporters arrived on the scene, capturing every angle of the transformed hot tub and interviewing residents who expressed both amusement and indignation. "It's unbelievable," one reporter said on live TV, "that a simple act of creative revenge could spark such a fierce debate about property rights and personal freedom." The narrative rapidly shifted from a local prank to a broader discussion on the limits of HOA authority and the right of homeowners to use their property as they see fit. Within the HOA board, the atmosphere grew increasingly volatile. Emergency meetings were convened, and behind closed doors, board members argued heatedly over how to handle the fallout. Some insisted that strict enforcement was necessary to maintain the pristine image of Willow Creek, while others began to question whether Karen's repeated fines and intrusive tactics were really in the best interest of the community. Leaked minutes from these meetings painted a picture of a board divided, a rift that was further widened by the public's digital outcry. I continued to document every development. My online updates detailed the incident in real time, from the moment I laced the hot tub with blue dye and chili to the explosive reaction that followed. Supportive comments flooded in from all corners of Willow Creek. Neighbors who had once remained silent under the threat of fines now shared their own tales of minor infractions and arbitrary punishments. Digital petitions demanding accountability and reform of the HOA's policies swelled to thousands of signatures. Every shared video clip and every hashtag became a rallying cry, reinforcing the message that personal freedom and creative expression were non-negotiable rights. Karen, for her part, tried desperately to control the narrative. In a series of hastily recorded videos posted on her social media, she attempted to justify her actions by claiming that her 911 call was a necessary measure to protect community standards. But her explanations were met with widespread ridicule and countered by overwhelming digital evidence. Every time she tried to reassert her authority, the community's response was swift and unyielding. "Karen, take a chill pill," one comment read, while another proclaimed, "Your days of micromanaging our lives are numbered." As the controversy intensified, the HOA board was forced to announce a final public hearing to address the incident and to decide on disciplinary actions against those responsible for the unwarranted fines and invasive behavior. The news sent shockwaves through Willow Creek. In the days leading up to the hearing, residents gathered in local parks and community centers, holding impromptu rallies and distributing flyers that called for reform. The digital petition I had initiated reached unprecedented numbers, and the collective voice of the community was louder than ever. The tension continued to build. Local law enforcement issued a statement urging residents to trust in standard safety protocols and to refrain from letting personal grudges cloud their judgment. "Our duty is to serve and protect all members of the community," the statement read. This endorsement further validated the movement against Karen's arbitrary enforcement, reinforcing the idea that public safety should be managed by professionals, not by individuals driven by personal vendettas. In the midst of this escalating conflict, I continued to prepare for the final showdown. I reviewed my digital dossier, every security clip, every supportive comment, every signature on the petition, and knew that the time had come to take this fight to the next level. The final public hearing promised to be a turning point, a moment when the collective will of Willow Creek would force the HOA board to rethink its policies once and for all. Every shared post, every hashtag, and every comment echoed the same message. Our community would no longer tolerate the intrusion of personal vendettas into our private lives. The stage was set for a dramatic confrontation that would determine whether the oppressive legacy of Karen's fines and arbitrary rules would continue, or if a new era of freedom and creativity would finally dawn on Willow Creek. The decisive moment arrived on a cool, clear morning at the Willow Creek Community Center, where the final public hearing was being held. The boardroom was packed with a diverse assembly of HOA officials, local law enforcement representatives, community leaders, and hundreds of resolute residents, all gathered to determine the future of our community's enforcement policies. With a calm, yet forceful presence, Councilwoman Denise Miller stepped up to the podium, her eyes reflecting the shared resolve of a community that had grown weary of arbitrary fines and invasive oversight. After a thorough review of all digital evidence, including time-stamped security footage, detailed reports of property complaints, and the heartfelt testimonies of our residents, we have reached an undeniable conclusion. Councilwoman Miller began, her voice resonating with authority. It is abundantly clear that the actions taken by Mrs. Karen Miller, specifically her unauthorized use of my property for personal gatherings and the subsequent fines imposed on me for my creative expressions, were not based on any legitimate concern for community aesthetics or safety, but were driven by personal bias and a flagrant abuse of power. A heavy silence fell over the room as Miller continued. Effective immediately, the HOA board will rescind all fines related to these incidents and will initiate a full disciplinary review of the practices that allowed such overreach. Furthermore, we will implement new guidelines that protect every resident's right to express themselves and to utilize their property without fear of arbitrary punishment. Today's decision is not merely about reversing a fine. It is a resounding declaration that Willow Creek values personal freedom and creative expression above petty enforcement. Her words struck a chord, and murmurs of approval rippled throughout the assembly. At that moment, a respected community advocate, known for his unwavering commitment to individual rights, rose to speak. "Today we stand united," he declared, his voice strong and impassioned. "No resident should have their right to enjoy their own property compromised by overzealous enforcement. Let this vote mark the turning point, a clear signal that our community stands for fairness, innovation, and the sanctity of private space. We demand accountability, and we will not rest until every violation of our rights is met with decisive action." His declaration was met with thunderous applause, uniting the room in a powerful call for change. Following his address, a senior officer from the local public safety department presented the final dossier, a meticulously compiled record of all digital evidence, expert testimonies, and official statements confirming that my actions, including the Blue Diane chili treatment of the hot tub, were within my rights as a property owner. The evidence was irrefutable. The fines imposed were arbitrary, and every complaint made by Karen was rooted in personal vendetta rather than genuine community concern. The Internal Affairs panel unanimously endorsed strict measures against any abuse of power, and the full report was scheduled for immediate public release. Councilwoman Miller concluded, "Let this resolution mark the dawn of a new era for Willow Creek, a community where every homeowner's rights are respected and where public authority is exercised with fairness and transparency. Our vote today is a resounding declaration that we will protect our freedoms and that no one, regardless of their position, can impose their will on us without accountability. Together, we stand for justice, innovation, and the inalienable right to live and express ourselves freely." Her final words, delivered with unwavering conviction, sealed the turning point in our struggle for property rights and creative freedom. In that defining moment, as every face in the boardroom shone with determination and hope, the balance of power shifted irrevocably. The overwhelming digital evidence and the unified voice of the community forced the HOA board to take decisive action, a turning point that would forever reshape the governance of Willow Creek. The days of petty fines and personal vendettas were over, and a future built on respect for individual rights was finally within our grasp. In the weeks that followed the landmark vote, Willow Creek underwent a profound transformation. News of the rescinded fines and the sweeping reforms implemented by the HOA board spread rapidly through local media and social networks, igniting fervent debates about property rights, creative freedom, and community governance. Editorials in the local newspaper, with headlines such as "A New Dawn for Willow Creek" and "Community United for Freedom," celebrated the decisive actions taken to safeguard every resident's right to use and express themselves on their own property. Hashtags like hashtag property rights, hashtag no more bullying, and hashtag art is freedom trended widely, reinforcing our collective determination to stand up against arbitrary rule enforcement. Town hall meetings and community forums saw record attendance as residents gathered to share their experiences and envision a future where creativity was not only tolerated but celebrated. Neighbors, who had long been silenced by the fear of punitive fines and intrusive inspections, now spoke passionately about their right to live and innovate on their own terms. Our property is our canvas, and our homes are our sanctuaries, one impassioned resident declared at a crowded meeting, his words echoing through the assembly. The atmosphere was charged with hope, a promise that Willow Creek would always defend the rights and freedoms of its residents. Within the reformed HOA board and local public safety departments, swift changes were implemented. Senior officials, led by Director James Carter and Lieutenant Marcus Reed, launched comprehensive training programs focusing on ethical conduct, cultural sensitivity, and the responsible management of community resources. Regular internal audits and transparent disciplinary procedures were established to ensure that every complaint was thoroughly scrutinized and that no resident would ever again be subjected to arbitrary fines or unjust interference. Our duty is to protect the rights and dignity of every member of this community, Lieutenant Reed affirmed during a follow-up press conference, reinforcing our renewed commitment to fairness and integrity. Community leaders and local civil rights organizations mobilized to empower residents further. Workshops, public forums, and educational campaigns were organized to raise awareness about property rights and the importance of creative freedom. When we stand together, our voices become a force for change, a local activist proclaimed at a town hall meeting, inspiring neighbors to unite in the fight for a more inclusive and equitable governance model. For me, the journey from confrontation to resolution was both deeply personal and profoundly transformative. My decision to stand up against HOA Karen's brazen infringement on my property and to unleash a creative act of rebellion by lacing my hot tub with blue dye and chili had not only reclaimed my rights, but had also ignited a movement that resonated throughout Willow Creek. Neighbors who had long endured arbitrary restrictions found their voices and shared their own stories of resistance. The digital evidence that exposed the absurdity of Karen's actions became a rallying cry for every resident who believed in the sanctity of private property and the right to live and express oneself freely. Karen Miller, once the formidable enforcer of the HOA's draconian rules, was now reduced to a cautionary tale, a stark reminder that no one is above accountability when a community stands united for justice. Her influence rapidly dwindled as records of her past transgressions circulated widely, underscoring the necessity of reform and the perils of unchecked power. At a final celebratory event held in the Central Park of Willow Creek, residents, local officials, and community advocates gathered under the warm glow of the setting sun. A large banner reading, "Unity, Freedom, and Creative Expression," was unfurled between towering oaks, and heartfelt speeches echoed with promises of a brighter, more inclusive future. Today, we celebrate our victory over arbitrary interference, a victory for every homeowner and every creative spirit in our community, Councilwoman Miller proclaimed, her voice resolute and inspiring. The standing ovation that followed was a powerful affirmation of our collective commitment to protecting our freedoms and ensuring that creativity remains a cherished value in Willow Creek. As each new day dawned over our transformed neighborhood, the legacy of that fateful confrontation endured as a beacon of progress. The story of how HOA Karen kept sitting in my hot tub and how I laced the water with blue dye and chili, resulting in her unforgettable scream, became a rallying cry for every resident who believed in the right to enjoy their own property without interference. Every sunrise now carried the promise that in Willow Creek, truth, justice, and the spirit of creative rebellion would forever prevail. In the end, what began as a personal battle evolved into a watershed moment for our entire community. We emerged more united, more vigilant, and more determined to safeguard our rights against any form of bureaucratic overreach. And as the sun rose each morning over our reclaimed neighborhood, it carried with it the promise that Willow Creek would forever be a place where freedom, ingenuity, and respect for individual expression shone as brightly as the early morning light.